When firefighters force the front door, they usually do so for access to search and attack the fire and not as part of a conscious effort to ventilate the structure. However, once firefighters opened the front door in these experiments, both structures exceeded the firefighter tenability threshold in less than 90 seconds. Once an opening is made, air can enter the structure and provide the missing element to a ventilation-limited fire. Let's take a closer look at the temperature inside the structure. In these experiments, only the front door was opened. In the single-story structure, the temperature was 360 degrees at the time of ventilation, exceeding the firefighter tenability threshold of 500 degrees at 550 seconds, and reached 1100 degrees at 650 seconds. In the two-story structure, the temperature was 430 degrees at the time of ventilation, exceeded the firefighter tenability threshold at 680 seconds, and reached 1100 degrees at 780 seconds. That's 3 minutes from the opening of the door until flashover. That's not much time. Opening the front door needs to be coordinated with the rest of the operations on the fireground. The simple act of pulling the front door closed after forcing entry until access is ready to be made as part of the coordinated attack will limit the air to the fire, slow the potential for rapid fire progression, and decrease the risk to firefighters and potential trapped occupants. Before ventilation occurred, smoke stopped coming out of the cracks in the structure. As the fire became ventilation limited, the temperatures decreased rapidly and significantly. While this drop in temperature was occurring, the pressure inside the structure was also decreasing. As this pressure decreased, smoke stopped coming out of the gaps in the structure. The same was true in the two-story experiments. The graph shows the temperature in the family room and images of the rear of the two-story house during the growth of the fire until it became ventilation limited and decayed. Smoke is visible coming from the windows at 390 seconds, but no smoke is visible at 510 seconds. Tactically, this could be very important to the initial crews sizing up a fire. It is important to consider that little or no smoke showing upon arrival does not mean that conditions are safer than if fire were showing. Smoke is not always an indicator of what's happening inside the structure. Given what we learned about the modern fire environment and considering the typical response time for most fire departments, we must consider that this fire is likely in the initial decay stage and not the incipient stage. As we've seen, in some structures, firefighters may have less than 2 minutes from the time of ventilation before conditions become untenable. So, when should firefighters make the ventilation opening? This question must be considered independently on every incident, and no two fires are the same. Consider how long it will take the hose line to get to the seat of the fire. In a single-story home like the one used in these experiments, it probably won't take too long to get to the seat of the fire. This means you may want to ventilate once the attack line is charged at the front door. In larger structures, like the two-story house used in these experiments, or a commercial building, it may be safer to delay ventilation until the engine advises that they're preparing to put water on the fire. Let's look at a hypothetical search operation in a single-story structure. The red line shows the firefighter's search pattern and the timeline of the search. The search crew forces open the front door 8 minutes after ignition. Seeing the amount of smoke coming out of the front door, they don their SCBA face pieces. The ventilation crew vents the front window at 8 minutes and 15 seconds. The search crew makes entry and begins to search the living room. There is fire on the surface in the middle of the room, but conditions are still tenable. Skipping the bedrooms, they proceed to search the left side of the house. They enter the kitchen at 9 minutes. The anticipated conditions are shown here. They search quickly and move into the dining room at 9 minutes and 30 seconds. They return to the entrance to the living room at 10 minutes. The anticipated conditions are shown here. This example demonstrates that 2 minutes is not a lot of time to operate inside the structure when conditions can deteriorate quickly. This graph shows the temperatures at crawling height for the rooms being searched, illustrating that the rooms are tenable during the search. However, once the firefighters circle back toward the living room, conditions are untenable, and they must find another way out of the structure. At that point, the dining room and kitchen become untenable, so the only option is to bail out of the window. If the fire is ventilated and water is not applied promptly, the fire will grow, increasing the hazard to firefighters and occupants. As we've seen, in some structures, firefighters may have less than 2 minutes from the time of ventilation before conditions become untenable. For this reason, a coordinated attack is critical. The synthetic materials used in modern furnishings generate more smoke than the natural materials found in more traditional furnishings, limiting visibility inside the structure. In these experiments, the smoke layer reached the floor before ventilation, creating zero visibility conditions inside the house. The traditional intent of ventilation is to lift and remove smoke from the structure to make firefighting operations, such as search and fire attack, more effective. In these experiments, we did not see the smoke layer lift as expected. What was observed and documented was a temporary tunnel of air rushing in through the ventilation opening. It appeared that as the fire received air, it produced more smoke than was being ventilated out of the house, and therefore we did not see lifting of the smoke layer. In these experiments, there was an apparent flow in through the front door toward the fire location. The average velocity through the bottom of the door was 3.4 miles per hour. There was also a tunneling effect that resulted from the rush of air through the front door. Without the impact of wind, this could indicate that we have a ventilation-limited fire. In this case, firefighters should exercise caution, slow down, and ensure that a charged hose line is available. In some cases, we did see the smoke lift above the floor level in the rooms adjacent to the fire, but rarely in remote rooms such as the bedrooms. Any lifting of the smoke layer went away once the fire room transitioned to flashover. Many fire departments use the vent-enter search tactic, ventilating a window, entering the structure through that window, searching the room, and then exiting through the same window. In these experiments, we demonstrated that conditions can worsen when a window is ventilated remote from the fire, and that a closed door can significantly protect a room from fire conditions, even with an open window. During Experiment 8, the second-floor bedroom was ventilated to simulate a firefighter conducting a VES operation without closing the bedroom door. Here, we see the bedroom temperature with arrows indicating the tenability threshold for firefighters and occupants. The temperature 1 foot above the floor was approximately 140 degrees at the time of ventilation. It reached the occupant tenability threshold within 2 minutes and the firefighter tenability threshold within 3 minutes. Based on the peak temperature measured in the adjacent bedroom with the closed door, temperatures would not have risen much above 140 degrees if the door had been closed during the ventilation operation. During experiment 14, firefighters ventilated the window to the closed bedroom, bedroom 3, at 8 minutes and 42 seconds. The video feed on the left shows the rear of the house as firefighters ventilated the window. The video feed on the right shows the conditions inside the bedroom with the door closed. We can see thick black smoke coming out of bedroom 2, which has the open door. But the conditions in bedroom 3 with the closed door remain clear to conduct a VES operation. The primary objective of VES should be to close the door of the room ventilated to isolate the flow path to the fire and prevent air from the open window from reaching the under-ventilated fire. This tactic can be thought of as Vent Enter Isolate Search, or VEIS. In many departments, firefighters are taught to ventilate as you go during search operations, theoretically to make conditions cooler and clearer throughout the structure. In these experiments, we saw that this is not the case unless water is applied to the fire in coordination with those ventilation efforts. Here we see the flow path created between the seat of the fire in the single-story house and the 4 windows opened by the search crew. Notice the difference in the living room temperature compared to the temperature when only the front door and 1 window near the seat of the fire were ventilated. Opening more windows resulted in faster fire growth, causing flashover to occur 40 seconds sooner. Here we see the flow path created in the 2-story house from the same ventilation scenario. In this experiment, opening more windows also resulted in faster fire growth, causing flashover to occur approximately 80 seconds sooner. Every new ventilation opening provides a new flow path to the fire and vice versa. In a ventilation-limited fire, this could create very dangerous conditions inside the structure. Ventilating a structure is thought to make conditions cooler and clearer throughout the house. However, unless water is applied to the fire, opening more windows simply creates new flow paths, causing the fire to grow faster and flashover to occur sooner. This reinforces the need to coordinate ventilation and fire attack operations. Many firefighters believe that creating multiple ventilation openings will cause a ventilation-limited fire to transition to a fuel-limited fire. Here we see the living room temperature 1 foot above the floor for each of the ventilation scenarios examined. In all 4 scenarios, the living room transitions to flashover. The orange curve represents the scenario with the most ventilation openings, 102 square feet in total, which you can see is also the scenario in which flashover occurred the fastest. In all 4 scenarios, the fire remained ventilation limited until suppression occurred. The fire in the 2-story structure behaved very similarly. The scenario with the most ventilation openings, 159 square feet in total, transitioned to flashover the fastest. These experiments indicate that the fire will remain ventilation limited regardless of the number of ventilation openings made. When it comes to rescue operations, the fire service makes decisions based on the tenability of potential occupants. A firefighter will assume some personal risk if there is a savable life inside the structure. In these experiments, the tenability of 2 side-by-side bedrooms was compared, one with an open door and one with a closed door. Here we see a comparison of the temperature inside the closed bedroom and immediately outside the closed bedroom door. The temperature reached 1,650 degrees in the hallway, while the closed bedroom temperature remained below 260 degrees. We observe this large temperature variance in every experiment. Here we see a comparison of the oxygen concentration inside the closed bedroom, the adjacent open bedroom, and the living room. The oxygen concentration in the living room and open bedroom dropped below 10%, while the closed bedroom's oxygen concentration remained above 19.5%. The conditions in the closed bedroom were tenable, while the conditions in the open bedroom were not. We see similar results in the two-story structure. The temperature reached 1,520 degrees in the second floor hallway and 800 degrees in the open bedroom, while the closed bedroom temperature remained below 210 degrees. Across all experiments, conditions in the closed bedroom remained tenable based on temperature and oxygen concentration thresholds. The simple act of closing a door between the occupant and the fire, or a firefighter and the fire, can increase survivability. During fireground operations, if a firefighter is searching ahead of the hose line or becomes separated from the other members of the search crew and conditions deteriorate, entering a room with the closed door until the fire is knocked down will give the firefighter extra time to escape or be rescued. We have been looking at examples of the impact of fire departments' initial ventilation actions. It is possible that the fire will have already failed a window, or that a door or window may be left open by occupants escaping the fire before crews arrive. It is important to understand the impact that an existing ventilation opening will have on fire growth and development. In this example, we compare two fires, one in which the front door was left open before the fire department arrived, and one with no openings existing prior to fire department arrival. Both fires grow and become ventilation limited, but they differ in their initial decay stage. The house with the open door does not cool as much as the house with the closed door because there is still some air to sustain the fire. When the second ventilation opening is made by venting the front window, the fire grows more quickly in the house with the open door, as shown here. This demonstrates that the fire was still ventilation limited and will react just as fast to any additional air entering the structure through additional ventilation openings. In fact, it is more likely that the fire will respond more quickly because the fire maintains a higher temperature than if there were no ventilation openings present. In these cases, rapid fire progression is highly probable, and coordination of fire attack with ventilation becomes even more critical. There has been a lot of debate around the topic of pushing fire. Once a hose stream is directed into an opening with fire or hot gases exiting, the fire could be pushed via 1. The pressure from the stream, 2. Airflow created by the stream, or 3. Steam expansion, which could create conditions in the house that are worse downstream. This study was not explicitly designed to examine this problem, but since these fires were knocked down with external water application, the data does offer some insight. Firefighters are trained to ventilate as close to the origin of the fire as possible to prevent the fire from spreading to other areas of the house. These experiments show how ventilating rooms far away from the seat of the fire significantly increases the temperatures in these rooms and creates a flow path for the fire to the previously uninvolved areas. Click to see examples from the experiments. Here we see a comparison in the two-story structure. The red line illustrates what occurs when the family room window near the seat of the fire is ventilated. The blue line shows what happens when the window in bedroom number 3, remote from the fire, is ventilated. Ventilating near the seat of the fire localized combustion. It took longer for the fire to peak in the family room because the remote ventilation was on the second floor, which allowed more time for the air to enter from the front door and cause the fire to grow. The air from the back bedroom was limited, which did not allow for temperatures to peak as high as the 2 ventilation points near the seat of the fire. When bedroom number 3 was not in the flow path, its peak temperature was 480 degrees. However, when it was in the flow path, temperatures increased to 1,070 degrees. Fire needs 3 elements to exist: heat, fuel, and oxygen. In every experiment, the fire grew until it ran out of oxygen. The fire drew oxygen from the entire structure, lowering the oxygen concentration in surrounding rooms, including the more remote bedrooms, until combustion was no longer possible. Even when the fire room was fully involved and flames were venting out of the structure, the surrounding rooms, such as the dining room and kitchen, did not support flaming combustion. We see some evidence of pyrolysis or melting due to high temperatures, but there was no burning in the adjacent rooms. The only exception was when windows remote from the seat of the fire were ventilated. Remote ventilation created a flow path into other parts of the house and allowed the fire to spread along the flow path. These observations reinforce the importance of ventilating near the seat of the fire and localizing the fire conditions. Since the hot gas layer develops at the ceiling, it would seem logical to ventilate as high as possible in the room. We must also think about how the cool air enters the room as the hot gases are leaving. If the fuel needs cool air entering the room will transition to flashover. In this scenario, ventilating at the top of the room did not provide the intended relief. This image shows the windows that were open to ventilate low and high in the family room. The temperatures at the floor and ceiling are plotted here. In both experiments, the fire became ventilation limited, and then the temperatures decreased. Once the door and window are opened, we see that the temperature increased much more quickly in the room with the higher ventilation opening. The temperature reached 1,740 degrees at the ceiling and 1,200 degrees at the floor at approximately 2 minutes after ventilation, and the family room flashed over. In the room with the lower vented window, the temperature reached 1,470 degrees at the ceiling and 930 degrees at the floor 4.5 minutes after ventilation. Allowing air into a ventilation-limited fire low and letting hot gases out at a higher location can create prime conditions for flashover. Understanding how the results of these experiments may impact firefighting tactics is crucial to safe and efficient fireground operations. The tactical considerations presented in this lesson offer options based on research that can help reduce risks on the fireground.